गुड इवनिंग एंड वेलकम टू गनर शॉट. गनर शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है. Today we're going to do something very very funny and interesting and serious, and that is the exit strategy of China in Iran war. The best exit strategy of any country in the Iran war has been that of China. If their big talk of winning without fighting, this is it. They are winning without fighting because they can't fight. But that's a different story. But they're winning without fighting as the way they look at it. So we're going to go into the various details. And let me tell you now at the outset itself, it's going to be a longish affair because I'm going to weave a lot of things. And I'm going to put some theoretical exercise into this. I wouldn't say theoretical, I would say something written by authors, books, maybe bookish, but it has a bearing. So we're going to understand how China's exit strategy in Iran war has been operating and why. The more important reason is why. And you'll see that there are external issues and there are also internal issues. The external issues are just a manifestation of what's happened. Venezuela, Iran, but the internal issues are dangerous. I've been, every day in the morning, I've been religiously showing you the headlines from New York Times, headlines from Washington Post, the headlines from Al Jazeera, and headlines from South China Morning Post for the past 15, 16 days. And I've been showing South China Morning Post only for one reason. And the reason is, how are they covering this war? And every day, I have told you they're not covering this war. Hardly any mention. Unlike, a New York Times or Al Jazeera who gives opinions, hardly anything. Why? And this is one of the fundamental reasons why they've had an exit strategy. I must state this upfront. Color revolution. They're very scared that if tomorrow Iran falls, there's a color revolution, enforced color revolution or a regime change in Iran. And if this is discussed in the Chinese media, what happens to Xi Jinping and company? They're very worried. If I go back into history, when Xi Jinping went to New York, when he was a vice president, not when he was president, I'm going back 15 years back. One of the discussions he had with American interlocutors in a dinner was about color revolutions and things like that. And he was worried. The guy who spoke to him over dinner, I read his article somewhere, that's why the recall came, that Xi Jinping was very interested in this. By then, probably he knew he would be in chair. We don't know. I mean, let me put it this way. But color revolutions. Couple of times in his tenure in the past 5-6 years, even, right? There are times when Xi Jinping has either rushed to Beijing. Once he left the SCO conference, the last day he rushed back to Beijing. Once, when he was in the BRICS conference in South Africa, he went off to Tibet and he appeared in Lhasa, and from Lhasa he took a train ride to Beijing. So color revolutions are part of his psyche. And if people in China read too much about what's happening, they'll be hard put to, take this. And if a color revolution happens in China, the Chinese Communist Party is cooked. Same thing about Cuba. Cuba is also mentioned somewhere. And I'll talk of Cuba today. Why do you think I spoke of Cuba in the morning? Many people didn't come. It's a pity. Okay? It's a pity that many people didn't come to watch what I spoke about Cuba. Because everything I spoke of Cuba has bearing here and we'll prove it. Okay, let's get ahead. Now, the formal thing which I'm going to say. Look, this is John Suttinger. He recently wrote a book on Yubang, and it's mentioned in this small little video. It's a promo video actually, but it's very interesting to hear him. Okay, what's been the impact of this war on China? I'll play this video. If you can't hear, do let me know, and I'll play you the video which I other directly loaded.
Strikes on Iran mean for Xi Jinping?
Shock that the United States has not only been able to, but willing to engage in these kinds of operational matters against major enemies of ours and friends of theirs.
What do the U.S. decapitation strikes on Iran mean for Xi Jinping and the future of the Chinese regime?
They are perfectly happy to take advantage of forces in the world that are adamantly opposed to the United States and use them to their advantage and to keep the eyes off of the problems in East Asia.
Today I sit down with eminent China scholar Robert Sudinger, a former CIA and State Department intelligence analyst and author of The Conscience of the Party, Hu Yaobang, China's Communist Reformer.
And the silence from all those military commands has been deafening. There is a great deal of stress about what is it that Xi Jinping really wants us to do.
Why is Xi Jinping purging his own military leadership? And what does...
See, he is now talking of the shock which China has got of this action. And he's talking of the stress within and PLA. We're going to touch about this in detail. Because that has got a tremendous bearing on what's happening in Iran or in China. Okay.
Reveal about the People's Liberation Army?
The system is actually more fragile than it looks. It is.
The system is more fragile than it looks. Very important statement. Most of us think China is the next great power. It is more fragile than it looks. And today, I'm going to show you that fragility.
And when it breaks, it tends to break hard.
This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Yanya Kellick.
Right? So you heard that. Now, hear this Fox News, clip. And it's about Ayatollah's new supreme leader, son who's become a supreme leader and views about China. Okay? So let's hear this.
From Iran with what the United States has done. And China wanted...
In under 10 days is historic. You just heard the senator say he'd plant the flag, declare victory, and come home. Would you?
Oh, yeah. You could even add more as I was listening to the program. This is a strategic victory against China because the Chinese leader told his military officials.
So this is a strategic victory against China. Whatever the outcomes in Iran, my view, and I've been telling this from day one, this is a strategic victory against China. 50% of what Trump set out to do has already been done. The rest, Iran, what will happen, and we'll see that. Many people might have divided opinions on what I say, but I'm very clear.
Be ready for war in 2027. Well, that is less likely now because a lot of their oil reserves are now being cut off from Iran.
So that 2027 deadline, going to Taiwan, Yewo, and all that are on the, of the table. Because the longer this war lasts, the more difficult it will be for China. okay, the more threatening it will be for their energy infrastructure.
The United States has done. And China wanted to use Iran as a second front to distract America from.
So, another major issue, China wanted to use Iran as the second front. So, when something moves against China, Taiwan, and all, some distraction by by Iran. That's gone. Whatever happens to Iran, political outcome, ye jo bhi hai, Iran can't retaliate anymore. They'll do some chick pick and all that. That's local to West Asia. And now, 1 year, 2 years down the line, if USA goes into China, there's no one between China and USA. That's a very important outcome of this operation, which many people have not caught on.
Taiwan. That now is not happening as the United States is taking care of Iran, so it won't be a second front. So this puts us in an advantage with China and makes war less likely. So I think that's a huge strategic benefit and outcome that nobody seems to be talking about.
See, nobody seems to be talking about this. But, well, a guy like me has to do that, so he'll do that. Now, another interesting thing. Look at this picture. This is the Chinese delegation in Vietnam. What is this delegation doing in Vietnam? You have to understand that. That's why I said there are a lot of strands in this story. That exit strategy of China is based on a lot of strands. And this strand is the strand of Communist Party of China, and which we're going to discuss in detail later. Why is a major, delegation from China gone to Vietnam? Okay, who have all gone? Foreign Minister Wang Yi, Public Security Wang Ziyahong. Their Minister of Public Security is what? It's equivalent to Home. National Defense. Their Defense Minister Dong Yun. All three have gone to Vietnam. Why have they rushed to Vietnam? They have rushed to Vietnam because global communism is going to die. Is on the verge of dying. The last three bastions of global communism were where? China, Vietnam, Latin America, with Cuba as the linchpin. Cuba has fallen. Venezuela is gone. All those Latin American countries which were left-leaning have become right-leaning. Leftism is just going. Russia has flipped. Iran. Whatever happens, Iran is no more someone China can count on. Forget about the Iran theater. Forget about the Iran war. So, last bastion is Vietnam, and Vietnam is getting closer to USA. They are worried if Vietnam also goes non-communist, हम तो गए भाई, हम किसी को लेके भी नहीं जाएंगे साथ. वो है ना, हम तो डूबे सनम, आपको भी ले जाएंगे साथ. अब यही बोलेंगे हम, आप जाओ सनम, किसी को नहीं लेके जाओगे आपके साथ. Communism. They're worried. That's why such a strong delegation has gone to Vietnam. Not many people have caught on to this. And I heard about this somewhere, and just about a couple of hours back, Zhu Fihong, who's he? He's a Chinese ambassador to India. He put this tweet out. मैंने कहा यार ये तो हम तो भूल ही गए. Quickly I bloody took it and chaped it, and I'm showing it to you. Okay. Then there's some other incident which has happened in its periphery. Japan. Japan is remilitarizing. The Chinese threat envelope has changed. Today it is North Korea, South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, Philippines, and India. It wasn't so. Japan is the new entry. And Japan has hit missiles on the first silent chains which can hit China. And you're seeing the effect of missiles on Tehran. What will be the effect of all these missiles if Japan and USA and Taiwan and India pound China? You and I may discuss कि भाई ये हो नहीं सकता, but think of a Chinese planner. Like we say, two front war, they look at four front war or five front war. See, that's change. So why will he enter the Iran war? His tail is on fire. Okay, and everyone says he'll go into Taiwan. Oh, let him go into Taiwan. Don't you see what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz? He can't take oil through these mountains. You can't go through Kunluns. You can't go through Himalayas. You can't go through Zagros and Tian Shan. These are the blue lines. And this been this map I must say is by Ken Cow, whatever, and the China Crash Chronicle. Ken Lau, that's him. He's made this map. When I saw that, it just picked it, slapped it here. Ken, thank you. If you've seen this video, thank you. Acknowledged. See, think China, not Iran. Everyone is focused on Iran. Think China. Dekho, iska lines. Malacca Strait or Lombok or all these straits, Mindanao, and China's oil goes. And if now he tries to go to Taiwan, Hormuz तो गया वो तो पता नहीं कब खुलेगा, ये भी जाएगा. So ये जाएगा तो oil which is coming from South Africa will also not reach. When I say Africa, Cape of Good Hope. So you see how China has to exit this whole story. That is why you see China contracting. And so far I'm discussing the external factors. I have not touched the internal factors, which are frightening. There's this article in, FP, Foreign Policy. China is learning the lessons of hard power. It's by John Spencer. We'll take it forward. This is what he says. Okay, you can't see this, so I'll put it on this thing.
I don't think they'll have anything to do with the current conflict. While they were doing that sharing, they did a joint.
So look, this initially is a lot of this thing, but I'll go to the part where he talks about China. Okay, so that we are clear about that.
Exercise before the war kicked off. I think that's
Yeah.
your enemy, what you're not willing to do in an ongoing conflict.
Yeah, John, you've set me up nicely for my next question, which is what kind of direct or indirect support China provides to Iran, beyond certainly that oil that's on those few tankers that have made their way through the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big card here. China is the biggest loser in all of.
See, what he says in this is the anchor, very few tankers have gone to China. So there's some news going around. In the morning, I showed it. In the past 3 days, only 15 tankers have crossed Strait of Hormuz. Okay, both ways. 12 one side, 3 other side. Out of the 12, 3 have come to India. Bachar now. So you can imagine how many would have gone to China. And they've gone to Turkey, Pakistan, Yevo and all that. Okay, so that's the important point he made. Very few have gone to China.
I mean, China gets 20% of its imported oil from Iran, but it's also 90% of where Iran's oil goes, despite sanctions. And it buys it at dirt cheap prices, like $7 to $15 per barrel, 1.6 million a day, just in the energy aspects. But they also signed a just splash.
See, at the cost which they're going to get hit very badly. They're going to get very hit badly because the costs are, all those. First and foremost, the discounted oil is gone, and then oil is not there, and they have to buy it premium. Their economy is going to get hit very badly. We'll talk of that also. Right? Yeah, like this chap, BJ, China is not going to vanish. Who said it's going to vanish? It's going to be there. There's no doubt about it. They know how to bide their time. Let them keep biding their time. It'll come in next century at this rate. They go 2030, I said. Remember that. I've been saying 2030 we'll see a different China. You'll see it happening. You're already seeing it happening. You're already seeing it happening. Okay? So, let's move ahead with this story.
25-year, $400 billion deal with Iran for infrastructure, transportation, and of course, energy. But really, the only reason we're having this conversation is because China is the reason that Iran had centrifuges. So 20,000 centrifuges that were destroyed during the 12-day war. The ability to make those was China. The ballistic missile supplies, how many sanctions, even last year, the United States was putting on China firms for supplying Iran with the necessary components to make ballistic missiles and pursue its intercontinental ballistic missile program that it wanted. But this is also an unraveling of the greater China strategy. So not just in its losses, which is not willing, it's not going to step in and to help Iran.
So he's talking of the greater China strategy, unraveling of the greater China strategy. Look at this greater China in combination with what's happened in Iran, what's happened in Latin America, Greenland, EU. It's not one. And what's happening in the Middle East itself. And we'll talk of export and all a little later. I'll come to that. I told you it's going to be a long session today. Yeah.
It's just the biggest loser in this situation. But it's also part of that larger thing that China was trying to do in this.
Yeah. He says you should visit China and watch for yourself cities like Shanghai and Beijing. करूंगा क्या मैं उनका अचार डालूंगा देख के चंपक जी क्या करूंगा मैं उनका अचार डालूंगा जब वो हमारे सरजमीन लेने पे तुला पड़ा है वो हमारा सरजमीन में बैठा है मैं शंघाई में जाके बाइनोकुलर लगा के देखूंगा वो क्या जी जिनपिंग मेरे सामने आकर नंगा नाचेगा बेवकूफों की तरह बात मत कीजिए समझ में आया सबको अगर आप चीनी को चूसना चाहते हो तो आप खुद जाके चूसो Okay.
Road. I mean, if you add Venezuela and who was buying Venezuela's oil on the shadow fleets in the black market, who bought the Panama Canal and all the ports.
So he's also talking of the Venezuelan oil, which is hit. Okay.
South America. This is all part of China's larger plan. But in Iran, it's losing its gas station and its ability to pursue with Iran's grand strategy, really a new world. And that's now been, that plan has definitely been not torn up, but greatly impeded with this war.
So
John Spencer,
there's going to be a
great
problem.
context.
So there's a big problem, China's route. Okay. Of course, Kandan says, no, wait. Kandan says, relax, these are trawlers. That's okay. Let's have some fun with them also. Okay, let's have some fun with them also. No problems. No issue. I'm not worked up. I'm also acting. Okay, I'm also trolling them back. Okay, having said that, let's get to the next part. Right? So that's very clear. Then what else has happened? See, something else has happened. Yeah. Something else has happened about China in this war, all these wars. Very clear from Venezuela to Iran why Chinese weapons are failing the real war test. This chap, whoever has written this article, has forgotten about Op Sindoor. Op Sindoor, in between, in Cambodia war, a lot of Chinese weapons failed. You know, that small war between Cambodia and kya bolte usko? Thailand. A lot of weapons failed. Venezuela people, they failed. Now Iran. The Chinese weapon market is going to get hit. Forget about how good, bad their weapons are. Their arms export is going to get hit. Export. And if they don't export, they're sunk. Please understand this. This is not one. It is not just oil, tail, all that. ये तेल तो इधर लगेगा इनको. कौन खरीदेगा चाइनीज वेपन्स इसके बाद? And we all know, I've been explaining to you why China withdrew from the Iran war. First, initially, they were giving support to Iran. Iran was toking all these countries wherever they wanted. Everyone came to know China supporting them. So the mood against China has turned. China has to get oil from those countries also. Now those chaps will jack up the rates later. These chaps there's some BRA investment. So it's against Chinese interests in the Gulf what Iran is doing. So China withdrew. Same thing with Russia. Why would China help Iran? They've left it. And I'll talk of that strategic partnership in a little later. I'll come to it. We have a long session today. Just be ready for it. But despite all this, idiots like this chap will go and talk all around. Victor Gao. What does he say? He talks of nuclear warfare. My God, what a bloody idiot.
The United States to launch a war against nuclear warheads plus one hydrogen bomb. China will now, in the world, fire the first shot, but China will not allow you to fire the second shot. Mr. Abrams also challenged me, saying that China's military buildup is a challenge, a threat to our neighboring countries. I told him point blank, no country in China's neighborhood is a match against China in terms of military power.
What a big idiot he is. Military power match, and he wants to talk of hydrogen bombs, that I have hydrogen bombs. Others don't have. What is he saying? Mutual assured destruction. This is the responsible China. This idiot is going and spewing all around.
China's military buildup is a matchup against only one country, that is the United States. China will never allow the United States to launch a war against China.
So China will never allow the United States to launch a war against China. Be clear about that. Very important thing. Why? They all run back and hid in China, bhai. वो तो चाइना में बैठे हैं सारे चाइनीज, उनका आर्मी नेवी सब बैठे हैं चाइना के अंदर. भाई आ जाओ, कोई तो हमें हिला दो. बट हिलाने के लिए यूएसए जो है ना, चाइना को टोकने की जरूरत नहीं. अंदरूनी प्रॉब्लम है, कलर रेवोल्यूशन. That color of the revolution will trick them. These buggers don't even know what they're talking. They get this loudmouth out and he comes on all Indian channels also, or Indian channels give him space to talk nonsense.
Conventional or nuclear without suffering devastating consequences. If you have not watched the Victory Day parade in Beijing,
that Victory Day parade today is a bloody joke. And this fellow goes around talking about it.
September the 3rd, one of the weapons China demonstrated, we call it 61 because it can contain 60 nuclear warheads plus one.
So all this nonsense these chaps talk. But when it comes to action, they have an exit plan. Exit plan बड़ा बढ़िया है चाइना का, है ना? इससे बढ़िया एग्जिट प्लान और आपको कहीं नहीं मिलेगा. ठीक? Okay, let's look at this. What does Masood Pezeshkian say? Right? He says China was supposed to finance many things. They didn't come. This is the president of China. He said this 3 days back or 4 days back. In my last show, I did show this. They left the field long back. So those who think China is supporting Iran, please unthink. A president of Iran says, yeah, they were supposed to help us financially, they never came. I think this is on the 4th day of the war or so. So what? That's China's exit plan. They've already made their exit plan and exited long back. Today they put this out. What have they said? These are all interesting things which are coming out of China. See how their exit plan is working. China has decided to provide urgent humanitarian aid to Iran, Jordan, Lebanon, and Iraq. So they're giving, what? Humanitarian aid. China will continue to exert its utmost efforts to promote peace and cease fighting. Have they done anything about it? And advance the restoration of peace and stability in the region at an early date, so as to avoid further humanitarian crisis. यार ये तो ट्रेन चला गया, आप लेके आ रहे हो चावल or whatever humanitarian aid which China wants to give. And this reminded me of a story. I must tell you all this. You know, during 99 Op Vijay, my unit was mobilizing from the northeast to, Kargil area, going by trains. A lot of people came forward to help us, right? Well, somewhere one guy came with blankets and blankets and things, boots and or socks and things like that. I said, यार ये क्यों लेके आ रहे हो? 99 की बात है, कंबल क्यों लेके आ रहे हो? मुझे क्यों ले आ रहे हो socks? So he says, sir, in 62 when India fought with China, our soldiers didn't have blankets, socks, and all that. I said, hey man, which world are you living in? We are in 99. We are a strong army. Don't you see guns there? So bloody big long guns of mine. Don't you see me dressed up hatta katta? Okay. What are you talking? He said, ठीक है साहब, मैं क्या करूं इनका? मैंने कहा ले जा यार, घर में दे दो किसी, beggar, give it to some underprivileged thing. किसी यतीम को दे दो, उनको भला करो. भगवान हमें भला करेगा. All this talk I had. Then I asked that fellow, मैंने कहा यार, why, who's organized this? कहता था Congress party organized it. I said, yeah, what a bloody nonsense, yeah. This party is completely out of tune with what is happening. The requirement is something else. We are getting something else. Same thing here. China is out of tune with what's happening in that area. You mean to say Jordan needs humanitarian aid? Or for that matter, Lebanon? Or Iran? If Iran needs humanitarian aid, why are they bloody fighting? They should put down and say, yaar, hame bhook laga hai, khana do. Or Iraq. They're completely out of tune. They have to be in the picture. That's why. Same thing as those blankets which were not needed but they gave. Which we gave to some poor people. And then this article which was there, which I discussed earlier. Why China won't help Iran. I discussed 4 days back. Have a look at that video. Okay. The headline tells you everything. Beijing cares about the oil, not the regime. Very simple. And then in this, he talks about this 400 billion strategic cooperation pact. Inked in 2021. Nothing has happened. Even after the 12-day war, what did China do? They only gave diplomatic rhetoric in support of Iran. The harshest language China has used so far was condemnation. They condemned the assassination of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khomeini. Nothing else. They didn't rebuke USA. They didn't rebuke anyone. Dumb nahi hai. Exit strategy is working. And China will work with any fellow as far as it is paisa. They want oil and economic interest. Bas, there's no shared economic interest. It's their economic interest. In that article, one thing is given. One thing China worries about and what could sway Beijing's calculus and force it off the sidelines. 5 days back, he wrote, this chap. He says, if anything will force Beijing out of the sidelines and get it into the center stage, is the closure of Strait of Hormuz. Because it will cut off more than half of China's oil imports. It's happened. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. China is not sitting in the sidelines, it's sitting inside. It will not come out. I have to take your mind back to 2004 tsunami. When the tsunami came, India was affected. There were only 2 navies which were operating in the Indian Ocean. US Navy, Indian Navy. Despite the fact that India was affected, the Indian Navy was out helping people in Java, Sumatra, all that. And the PLAN was sitting inside. When the time comes, major, you will see China missing. And they're repeating it today. हाँ उनका शिप है वहां. They'll take all data. They'll say AI. They'll bloody bamboozle you. But they can't do anything. नपुंसक है. They बच्चे पैदा नहीं कर सकते हैं. Then of course, this was a week back. Trump's visit and the priority for this year are 2 sessions. 2 sessions and Trump's visit. 2 sessions ho gaya, I'll talk of it. Trump's visit, Trump has said I'll come next month. I'll not come now. And already China is shaken. If Trump doesn't go there, China cannot export anything. They want a deal. Na? They want a deal from Trump. Today, Trump is not bothered about rare earth. He'll say, you keep your rare earth, I'll sort you out later. If Iran falls, just think, if Iran falls, Trump will say, okay, Iran has fallen. You don't give me rare earth, I'll not give you oil. Carry on. Do what you want. What will China do? So China is shaken. And Xi Jinping thought that he will show his power. I did this program earlier. The day when, Xi Jinping spoke to Putin in the morning and Trump in the afternoon. Why did he speak to both? He wanted people to understand that he's still in power because his power is shaky. He wants Trump in China. If Trump doesn't go to China, it is loss of face for Xi Jinping and his power goes down. Please understand the Chinese game plan. Right? 2 sessions. So I'll talk of 2 sessions. And as per Ken, he says Trump's Beijing visit is turning into Xi Jinping's nightmare. There are 3 points in this. Here in this, he says Trump is bringing a sanctioned US Secretary of State along. Marco Rubio sanctioned by USA, and he'll be with Trump, and he'll enter China. What can China do? He's sanctioned. They should arrest him. Will they have the guts to arrest him? No, they'll give him a state welcome. Okay. And Trump has already shortened his visit only to Beijing. Then, US may approve the largest arms sales to Taiwan. When Trump is in Beijing, all this is in the air. The arms sale might be approved to Taiwan. That's like putting a finger up, where. Okay. And Trump has so far not sent a CEO delegation to China. He's not approved. Normally what happens is a CEO delegation, CEO of all the big firms from USA go to China, meet the CEOs there. So there's a CEO to CEO meet. Some deals are worked out. And then that comes up for discussion. Based on that, good, cheers, jo bhi hota hai. That delegation is not going. If all this doesn't happen, what is this visit all about? What is this visit all about? And he's already said, I'll not come because I have to sort this war out. That we've already spoken. So there are problems for China. That exit strategy is not working also very well. And Chinese EV makers increasingly reliant on exports as domestic sales decelerate. Domestic sales are bloody falling. They don't have. And if they don't export, they're done. I've been telling this. One day I'll discuss their entire economics. I'll touch upon them today. They're in a bad shape.